morning and welcome to Bronx Talk. You know, we usually like to cover a wide range of subjects on this program, and we believe that in our diverse borough, there are more important topics to focus on than we have time for. But the Bronx has just undergone a spate of shootings and deaths by gunshot, and so it's necessary to cover that four-letter word, guns, for the second time in just 6 weeks. And so to get a direct line on what's happening with this troubling problem and how to address the many issues involved, we brought in the District Attorney of the Bronx. Welcome back to Bronx Talk, the Honorable Darcel Clark. Always nice to see you, Madam District Attorney.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
Well, let's see. The NYPD stats show that over the first 8 months of the year, shooting incidents, and you know this like you know your own name, shooting incidents in the Bronx were at 186 with 228 victims, down from 224 and 285 over the same period last year. Mm-hmm. But something is happening right now. There was a period of time just a week or two ago when you open up the newspaper, every day there was another shooting in the Bronx. Overall in the city, shootings have gone down. What have we got that the other boroughs don't seem to have? Or what do you see as the problem? Because you see them all come across your desk every day.
Well, first of all, it's just very unfortunate. My heart goes out to those families and the community that's suffering from this spate of gun violence that we've seen recently. Yes, it's true that the numbers were going down and we're going in the right direction, but every now and then just things happen, you know? But I see that the problem in the Bronx has been, and things are changing, and thank God for the NYPD and the mayor and people now finally concentrating on the Bronx, is that we've always been under-resourced and underserved for a very long time. So in communities where the numbers have gone down dramatically, we've always seen that there's always been an intentionality in bringing more resources to those communities, whether it's more police, which we could always do, and I'm always in favor of more police, but also programming and money and jobs, and really just concentration on communities themselves, investment in community. And I have been jumping now for almost the last 10 years trying to explain that to people. And it's not until we have a week or 10 days like we've had recently when people start to focus on, oh, maybe that's what it is. So I think the refocus now on doing that is making a difference. I'm thanking God that it was only those 10 days, and we've seen things have gone down, things are calming down.
It's been quieter.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good start. Now, the first 6 months of the year, I believe your office put this out, there were more than 100 people shot and 24 of them were fatal incidents. I did the math on that. That means we're getting 4 a month, which is practically a gun death every week, which is just absolutely horrible. But then your office in the release I saw concluded that while overall shootings in New York City has decreased, there's been a concerning rise in youth gun violence. So let's just start there. We'll break a lot of this down, but let's talk about youth. Now, you talked about services and all that. Where are we at, and there's gangs. I mean, how do you see what's going on with young people in the Bronx? Maybe specifically young men mostly.
No, well, young people, we're at a crisis. You hear me say all the time, we're losing a generation of our young people to this gun violence, whether they're the victim of the crime. We've seen the age of victims of crime getting younger and younger, and those offenders are younger and younger. That means we have to do more to reach our young people. That means we have to make sure we get into the schools. That means for those who are not going to schools, they need an option of a job or some type of programming. That means, you know, that I have to be a lot more forceful in the law enforcement part of it. Because look, let's face it, these young people are 13, 14, 15. They're not old enough to vote. They're not old enough to drink. They're not old enough to buy guns, so how are they getting these guns?
That was going to be my next question.
Yes, so therefore, my concentration has not only been in helping those victims of crime, prosecuting those and holding accountable those who are committing the crimes with the gun, but also the gun itself is a crime. So in as much as I'm dealing with the non-fatal shootings, that means a bullet that hits skin, I have to deal with those. I have to deal with what turns out to be the homicides. I'm dealing with that. But also the gun that was used in the case, whether a person is just possessing a gun or they're using it. Where did that gun come from? And we are really concentrating on that now, working with our federal partners, working with all other law enforcement partners, working with the community to see where is this coming from. We're on the iron pipeline, so everybody knows that. We're uniquely located because of the 95 corridor. Those guns come through that corridor all the time, buses, trains, cars.
Let's talk about that for a moment. We had a private conversation the other day at the 9/11 event that we both attended, and you said there's like boxfuls. There was an incident on Allerton Avenue, and I think they found 3 guns in the car. Now, I got to tell you, I grew up in the Bronx, went to DeWitt Clinton High School. Maybe we didn't do everything perfect, but we never had piles of guns. And you expressed that there are boxfuls of these things, and young people and gangs get a hold of them. Where does that start? That starts at gun sellers, let's say, I don't want to call out any state, in Virginia or South Carolina or something. Where do they start, and how do they come up that pipeline to get here?
Well, you know, the states that really that we see most of them coming from, because we have ways to trace them or whatever once we finally get them,
the gun,
right? And we have to get it. But it's the southern states, a lot of places where it's very easy to purchase a gun. You don't need a license. You don't need anything. Ohio is another feeder state. So there's a lot of places where these guns can easily be purchased. The trick is, how do you trace it from wherever it was bought to it being in the hands of one of our young people? And that's the work that we're doing now.
And so if the guns are there, and then they want to sell them, so they sell them up here? I mean, I can't imagine teenagers in the Bronx having the money to stand there and buy guns. I mean,
well, you know,
I don't know. I'm very innocent, Madam.
No, well, it's tricky,
Attorney.
and that's what we're trying to determine, who is putting the guns in their hands. I can't say that they don't have the money, because unfortunately, when we're looking at this gang activity and a lot of crimes now, economic crime is a very big part of what we're seeing with gang activity as well. They're very sophisticated on credit cards, all of these scams with the, you know, Cash App and different things. Like, there's a lot of different mechanisms in order to spend and buy. So those are all the things that, you know, we're looking into to see how the guns get from the manufacturers, because, you know, here in the Bronx, you're a Bronx boy. We got no gun manufacturers here, but yet and still these guns are here.
Are coming here. You know, I made a little bit of a list. That shooting on Allerton Avenue was just so crazy. It was like 5 young men in a car, and I think, if I got it right, they recovered 3 guns. Then they sped away in a getaway car, and then with the police chasing them, then they crashed the car. I think one of the people in their car got injured or got killed, and there were 5 people in that car. This is like crazy Chicago mob stuff, you know? It just seems crazy. There was another one I saw. A 15-year-old boy was arrested for a shooting. He was still wearing his ankle monitor. From a 15-year-old already had an ankle monitor. That's shocking enough. And then whatever he went through wasn't enough to get him to get out of that game. It's shocking. Regarding the ankle monitor, people politically blame bail reform. Have you seen that as a problem? Like, you say, gee, I wish I could keep this person, or wish we could stop him from getting back out on the streets? Or do you find that it's a fair process, and people who don't have the money then have an opportunity to, you know, defend themselves in court?
I think we have the opportunity to get bail on the cases that we really need to get the bail. What people fail to realize is that even in cases that are bail eligible and we get bail set, people make the bail, so they're out already. Or judges have the option. And again, it's not up to the DA on whether they're in or out. That's a judicial decision. So I can make bail application after bail application to ask that they be held in, but it's judges that make those decisions. So for somebody who is out but on an ankle monitor, that's like supposed to be one step short of them actually being incarcerated. Or some of them, bail is set, and if they make bail, then they have to put on the ankle monitor. There's just some people that are just bad. I mean, I don't know what else.
I don't mean to laugh.
You know, but
It's
I don't know
very
what else to
serious.
say. Like, we've done all, I'm trying to do all that I can within the rules that have been set for me, right? And until things change, or it's not for me to change, I'm law enforcement. So I have to follow the laws that they are. But you better believe that I want to hold these people accountable that are causing this harm, that are shooting these guns, that are carrying these guns. And every chance I get to ask for the bail, we do. And we get bail. But people have to realize the point of bail is to make sure that they return to court. And if they pay the money, they're going to be out. Unfortunately, if they're out and they do it again, then that's when we have the opportunity to ask for remand and ask that then there's no other option for them other than to stay in.
We did a show coincidentally last week about youth and getting youth on track with a couple of wonderful organizations. Aim High is one of them, and Roads to Success was the other one. One of the things they identified, because I automatically talked about high school kids and maybe even early college age, but they said 20 to 24 is still a big time of a quote unquote lost group of people who are now maybe more seriously in danger of becoming criminals because they a little older, they have a little more wherewithal, they may have more friends, et cetera, more wherewithal to get weaponry, et cetera, et cetera. Do you find that that is a problematic age group now, in addition to, we talked about youth gangs and all those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think it goes up to about age 24. That's why the Summer Youth Employment Program and different organizations are now catering to some of them that are a little bit older, because they could be 24 years old, but they were high school dropouts, or they grew up in a family that suffered trauma because they lost a family member to the violence. They live in different communities where there's not a lot of options or opportunities. So you would think, once you turn 18, like the doors open for all the opportunities in the world. You get to go to college, you get to have a job. That's not realistic in some of the communities that we serve. For some of the cases.
Yeah. Certainly many of them might have dropped out of high school and never gone to college. So in response to the shooting, and you've talked about the mayor to start, he said he'd add 1,000 more cops to the Bronx. The defund the police thing, which I never wanted to use that phrase because there are ways to allocate monies for all different kinds of things. It's likely going to be an issue in the mayoral campaign because both Adams and Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa, they favored cops as a way to address this. Zoran Mamdani wants New York to follow the model that other cities have that send mental health teams outside to help. What's your vision of really the best way to do it? I'm sure you're not going to say we don't want more cops, but how do we really put together a crime prevention plan that can work? Because we love our police officers, but it's often after the fact that we call 911 and they show up rather than preventing it. So that's my long-form question of something that's so important.
My answer is I need all of it.
I knew you were going to say that.
But because it's true, because you can't have just one option. Like the DA and the police should be the last resort. Like you said, we're coming in after it's too late. Right? After it's too late. So 21st century prosecution and law enforcement should be a number of things. It should be prevention, doing all that we can to invest in communities, put money into schools, jobs, stable housing causes, issues for people, mental health, substance use disorder. We have poverty. There's so many things that we can do to prevent some of these crimes if we invest in them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the police job. Right? But right now, because of all of those failed systems, the safeguard is call 911. That means make the police come and get the DA involved. That's not our job. And it shouldn't be our job. There are other people and agencies that should help. So it should be prevention. It should be intervention. Once people do come into the criminal justice system, I have to deal with them, but there needs to be off-ramps for those who really need it, right? So we're going to make sure that somebody that has mental health problems, that conduct may not necessarily be criminal. It is because you called the police and got the police involved. But if there was some way that treatment that person could have been in treatment all along or had the services in the community to deal with that. Substance use disorder, Gary, you're a Bronx guy. You know how long we've been dealing with drugs. This
Well, of course.
heroin epidemic is not new.
We've had every type of drug along the way.
Exactly. We've always had that. So again, dealing with that. So intervention, and I have to create programs sometimes because the courts don't have things in order to address those that come into the system. Then, of course, there's going to be the prosecution and law enforcement. That's why I need the police. I'm 100% in favor of more police because they have to do a job, and it's a hard job. Look, my husband did 40 years with NYPD. I know about good policing.
Thank him for his service.
And I know
please.
what work needs to be done. And I'm unapologetic about being a DA and prosecuting people and holding them accountable for what they do. That's my job. But also, I'm unapologetic about giving people second chances. And then re-entry. People we prosecute, they go to jail, they come back, they're going to return back to where they came from. And we need to make sure that they get what they need so that they're better off when they come out than when they went in. And even when they come out, that we have to do more. And my office does that. So that's why I say I need everything. I need programming, I need money, I need schools, I need cops. It's I
funny,
need it all.
I like that you say you need because you eventually get it, but we need is really. I'm just curious. Once you unpack cases and try to evaluate who committed the crimes and why they committed it, do you have in your mind a percentage? How many of these are really mentally ill issues versus criminal issues? Is there a way that, because sometimes I think that criminal is mentally ill, but of course I'm just an amateur.
Well, I don't have real hard statistics, but my approach is to look at every single person that comes in and see who they are, how they got here, and what justice is going to look like in their particular case. So I don't paint with a broad brush. Not every person that comes into the system is mentally ill or has a drug problem or suffer from trauma. There's all types of things. So I look at that individual, not necessarily even the charges. The charges are going to be the most horrific that we know. I know how to deal with that. I'm a former judge. I'm the DA now. I know how to deal with that. What I need to look at is this individual. How do we find out why they did what they did and stop them from ever doing it again? And when you do that kind of evaluation, that's how we make sure that we do the right thing where justice is going to be served for that individual who's accused, for the victim of the crime, and most importantly, for our community.
This is, I was worried, just as somebody involved in journalism and watching what goes on, that, and you were thankful that that little, spike that we had is apparently subsided, that if it got worse, all of a sudden it would get on the president's radar and then he would say, well, the Bronx, it's very easy for them to do that to us. We've got to have some kind of military intervention. Should I make the assumption you would rather not see that?
No, look, I know this job. I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I've been doing this for almost 40 years. Well, 10 years as a DA, 40 years in criminal justice between being an assistant DA, being a judge for 16 years to the mid-level appellate division in the state, as well as now almost 10 years as DA. We know how to make this work. We just need the commitment to help us save our communities and save our young people. Bringing in the military is not going to do anything more than just be another more enforcement. It's not going to stop the problem that has created it in the first place. That's what we have to do, get to the root causes of what's doing this. And bringing the military is not a root cause solution.
And in the Bronx, you can be sure it would stir up enough people and you'd have a whole other type of case to have to deal with. The show that we did 6 weeks ago about guns was with our friends at SUV at Jacoby Medical Center. There are many other groups like that in the Bronx. Are there methods effective? For example, at Jacoby, they treat gun violence as a disease, and then they'll bring in former gang members, et cetera, and then deal with the victims of the crime, because that's who ends up going to the hospital, and then doing a little trace to see what the relationship is, and of course to make sure there's no residual thing. Do those kinds of things work? And for example, you talked about where we're going to put funding. Those, what is the other group?
Save Our Streets.
Save Our Street.
Yeah. Bronx Rises Against Guns.
That's the one I was thinking.
Release the Grip. We have quite a few of them.
Do you think that if we put more funding into those kinds of groups, or those real neighborhood groups that are well-meaning but aren't quite effective in this process?
I think they are part of the solution as well, and they're partners with me. When I took office almost 10 years ago, they didn't want to come near me with a 10-foot pole. But now we're all partners. And what I think people need to understand is that they do need funding, but it's not for them to solve the violence. Their job is to be there to intervene, to stop that person before they pick up the gun and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
They're the prevention measure. Okay, that's what they're there for. People can't expect them to solve the problem, but they are very helpful. Look, I'm sure that there's a lot of cases I don't get because of SUV or SOS or RTG or BRAG are there before that person decides to pick up that gun and pull the trigger. Once that bullet is gone, they're going to belong to me.
I was going to say, hello,
right?
Madam DA.
But what they can also do is be there in the hospitals, like Guns Down, Life Up is in Lincoln, SUV is in Jacoby. They're there with the victim, try to provide services. Of course, my office is there for services too. My Crime Victims Assistance Bureau is amazing in doing that work as well. But they're also there about the retaliation you talked about. They are there in spaces and places I could never get to. Those people don't want to talk to me, but they will talk to somebody that's from their community that has been through that.
The last person they want to see coming out, no offense, is the district attorney.
And I want them to fear me. You know that? Yeah. They should. But that's one of the reasons why they need to think before they pull that trigger, because once that bullet leaves that chamber, they're going to belong to me at NYPD.
I want to just tap into this a little bit because, of course, this is not just a Bronx issue. It's a national issue. You are the co-chair of PAGV, which is Prosecutors Against Gun Violence.
Yes.
Well, why don't you talk for all of us to understand what that group is and what are the issues that you are dealing with on the larger scale?
Well, first of all, Prosecutors Against Gun Violence is a national organization of prosecutors who are against gun violence. I don't think there's any prosecutor in this country that is for gun violence. So what we do, we're advocates for changing the laws. We're advocates for victims to make sure that the laws protect victims of crime. We're advocates for making sure that there's a limitation on guns and who gets their hands on them. We submit briefs to the Supreme Court in different cases where the gun cases are going up. Ghost guns is a big issue that we've dealt with. Safe storage. I
haven't thought about that. That's another whole issue.
Safe storage, safety. You know, even people that are allowed to have guns, store them safely so a kid doesn't pick it up and bring it to school, or somebody doesn't steal it and commits robberies and things like that. So we do, advocacy, prevention measures. We're there along with a lot of different national organizations that do this work as well.
What do you hear from other DAs? Is it pretty much your experience, or do you hear from others, wow, that's interesting, we don't have that, I'm just curious of the global look.
We're a little different because we have some of the strictest gun laws in the country.
You saw Gary smiling when you said that.
But meanwhile, even with all the strict gun laws, we still have what we have, right? Well, I have colleagues in different states where there are no gun laws. You could just go to Walmart and buy a gun.
So they're even more frustrated
and you could leave it in
your
car. Yeah, they have more difficulty at times with it, but their crimes are being committed with legal guns.
I just saw that Florida approved open carry, which the thought of walking into a deli and having a customer standing there with a gun in his side, is very scary.
You got to get out of the Bronx because
I do have family in Florida.
I've been to these states different. It's not just Florida. There's a lot of states that are like that. You see people with a gun.
One of the things that DAs have done, Rob Johnson before you and you have done, is try to put out your own resources. So I want to promote the Reentry Employment Resource Fair that you have coming up, and let's talk about that we'll promote the event. We've got the flyer for it, but talk about that in relation to really having a role in prevention. That's what we're trying to do.
Right. Well, people would think that why would a DA be involved with
That's
reentry?
my
You
point.
sent them to jail or prison in the first place. And you know what? Even when I was a Supreme Court judge, I was invited to a reentry fair or reentry event. And I was like, why in the world would I go there? I send people to state prison. But when I got there and I met the people and I hear their stories and hear what happened before they got to prison, what led them to prison, and now they're out and they want to change their lives, I knew that I should play a role in something like that too, so that they don't reoffend. So that was just as a judge. I sentenced them and they go, and sometimes hopefully you never see them again. But as DA, I see it even more, because not only do I prosecute the cases, recommend sentences, see people leave the community, they're going to come back out. So I make sure that I can do something to help them be better citizens when they come out.
And so this is, let's see, September 30th
Yes.
from 10 a.m. at the St. James Recreation Center, not too far from here, which is on Jerome Avenue, just north of Fordham Road. So it's designed for ex-cons
Returning
and
citizens,
returning.
yes.
You explained it better than I did, and their families. Several years ago, I was working for one of the news networks, and I did a news story at one of the prisons upstate, and so there was a bus going up with family members, and it left from somewhere in the Bronx. I was frankly surprised that the bus was filled with people. And when I thought about all those people that you were talking about coming back, it'd be nice to have them really have a chance. And this is a better way to rehab them maybe than having them sit in prison.
Right. I mean, I attend our reentry fairs, and I tell you, the last one that we had, it was a man who returned home, and he came up and shook my hand and hugged me and said, "I can't believe that I'm hugging the DA, but you are doing this for me." He said, and didn't think that a DA would care enough. But we give them clothes, interviewing techniques, people there,
What do you need? We'll
employers are
help you.
there, any employers are there as
Tuesday,
well.
September 30th, 10 a.m. to 2 at St. James Recreation Center on Jerome Avenue in the Bronx, just north of Fordham Road. DA, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Darcel
Gary.
Clark, we
Thank you,
appreciate
Gary,
your
for
time.
always having me.
The dialogue will go on. Let's hope for nonviolence and peace. That's what we're working on.
Thank you.
We want to thank our producer, Rebecca Hemmick, our BronxNet production and editing crew. We have great people, thousands of people working for us here in the studio. And of course, it's about you and the people of the Bronx. That's what we care about. Let's keep it safe. Let's do the right thing. Let's find good resources. We'll see you next week. Good night.